This bill is set down for committee stage next sitting day, and we call now on Government Order of the Day number 8.
Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers Amendment Bill interrupted debate on second reading.
Members, when this bill was last being debated at its second reading, Chris Ockenvold had the call. He does not seek his remaining time. The next call goes to Labour. Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you very much for the call on this Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers Amendment Bill. Mr Speaker, at the last day when Parliament was considering this matter, we had an extraordinary tirade from the Minister Maurice Williamson on this legislation and why it was so necessary. And he talked particularly about the issue of health and safety and the need for us all to be sure that the tradespeople that we engage, in this case plumbers, gasfitters and drainlayers, be properly qualified, properly accredited, properly monitored, regularly updating their skills in order to ensure that the public health and safety was paramount and that work could be trusted to be done. In this context, he said that this fee that had been extracted, this disciplinary levy that had been extracted to fund enforcement action against non-registered tradespeople, needed to be legalised, because that was basically its intent, to rid the trades, this industry, of cowboys. Mr Speaker, while I have a lot of sympathy with that, I do not have sympathy with the Minister's misinformed and inappropriate tirade and the precipitate nature of the consideration of this bill. Mr Speaker, the Minister in his speech referred to an explosion in a Pizza Hut in Nelson. Can I just say he has now caused Pizza Hut nationwide to go into a bit of a tailspin about the safety of their eating houses. And Mr Speaker, can I just quote an email I received which included an email from David Hill, who's the regional operations manager at Pizza Hut. He says, "We definitely did not have any gas explosion ever in Nelson Pizza Hut or any of our other stores either. The comments made by Mr Williamson are obviously incorrect. We have fully compliant maintenance and safety programs in all our stores. You can assure all your friends who ask that we are a safe place to eat." Unquote. That was an email dated Monday the 15th of April. Mr Speaker, I feel the need to raise that as a point because the Minister impugned the reputation of Pizza Hut, and in the course of that I seek to correct that on the record and in the public domain. But more importantly, he was wrong. And if he's wrong about something like that, he can be wrong about the detail and the purpose of this retrospective legislation that is being put before the House now. It was not a Pizza Hut. There was a gas explosion in my neighbourhood fish and chip shop. That was the Milton Road Fish and Chip Shop a couple of years ago. And Mr Speaker, so it was nothing to do with Pizza Hut. And the poor owner, Mr Clark, at the time, it's now sold and under different management and is a perfectly successful and safe business once more. But the owner, who had operated a fabulous fish and chip shop for a long time in that area, was seriously injured. I visited him in the burns unit at Lower Hutt Hospital when he was transferred there because of the extent of his injuries. But Mr Speaker, nobody has ever been held accountable for that malpractice. If, in fact, there was malpractice, it certainly seems something went wrong because a gas cylinder exploded. We do not have reticulated gas in Nelson, and so it works off gas cylinders. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Williamson, the Minister, was quite wrong. There is a man who now has to work in Tākaka whose reputation has been destroyed because of the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers board. And there is something much more rotten in the state of Denmark with respect to the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers board than there is with the poor man who was burnt in an explosion in Nelson, in a fish and chip shop, and the poor gasfitter and plumber who was blamed but never found culpable. Now, Mr. Speaker, I draw this to the House's attention because a man's reputation in business has been ruined because the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers board, to my information, Mr. Speaker, has been covering up people who are responsible for signing off safety certificates. They have been covering up members of their own board or close friends who have been operating in a way that one could only call corrupt. And this is now a serious matter, and instead of bringing legislation to this House which retrospectively approves of an illegal fee that the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers board has been extracting from plumbers for the last few years, why doesn't the Minister, if he thinks there is a fault or was a fault with the original 2006 legislation, correct that fault instead of retrospectively validating a levy that was incorrectly applied? Mr. Williamson interjected last day that we were talking about this. He interjected and said, oh, members of Parliament only hear from a very few people, only hear from the same people, the same plumbers and gasfitters complaining about this, and we could all name them, but they represent others, Mr. Speaker, and I think the Minister needs to get out more, because I've had plumbers coming up to me in the Nelson market on a Saturday morning. They can't get in to see Nick Smith because he requires them all to make an appointment. So they come down the market and they see me and they complain. In fact, one sat with a sign outside Nick Smith's caravan last Saturday morning complaining about this bill. He was an ordinary plumber and gasfitter. He knows his trade. He's been doing it for decades. And this bill, instead of correcting any fault with the 2006 legislation, and that's actually disputable, whether there was a fault with that legislation or not, it's taken a long time for the government to work out that there was a problem with it, if indeed there was. But if there is a problem with it, why doesn't the Minister fix it instead of validating an illegal levy that's been imposed by a board that has behaved with less than stellar performance and less than exemplary conduct? Mr. Speaker, this isn't good enough. I'm told, the Minister tells the House, that the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers board will be bankrupt if they have to pay back the money they have taken from ordinary tradesmen. If that is the case, then they have to work from the ground up again to re-establish their funding base. They have an ongoing process of demanding legitimate levies from plumbers, gasfitters and drainlayers. They will never be bankrupt. They will always be having levies come in from the tens of thousands of tradesmen who pay to be certificated adequately and approved by the board. I'm all for health and safety, Mr. Speaker, but I am not for retrospective legislation validating an illegal levy by a dubious board governing these tradespeople. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call Holly Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's interesting, Mr. Speaker. I never imagined when I